Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Zach, and here we talk about overlanding, gear, builds, DIY, all sorts of stuff related to modifying your vehicle. Today we're going to be talking about a modification that doesn't take too many extra tools and honestly should be a pretty suggested add-on to any sort of lift. Oftentimes when you buy a lift, you'll see a couple of other check boxes like, do you want upper control arms? Do you want a lean spacer? Some things like this. In this area, there should really be another checkbox for a bolt-on Trackbar Correction Kit. This is what I'm going to be talking about today. Otherwise, there's some weld-on options out there. There's also adjustable panhard bars. We're going to talk a little bit why this kit is so special and why so many people already run it on the market, but I haven't seen a ton of videos on it, so I wanted to try it out. And so thank you to DrKDSS out there. DR is just his initials, but DrKDSS sounds pretty awesome. So go check him out. I'll have the products linked down below. But yeah, this is basically helping to correct for the panhard bar angle on your vehicle. And there's a couple of different benefits to doing this, and we'll kind of get into that later in the video. So all I'm going to do first is we're going to do a quick unboxing of what comes in the box when you order it from the website. And then we'll do an install, and then at the end I'll kind of talk through some of the details of why this is a helpful modification and why I think it's pretty important to just consider doing from the get-go when you install a lift. So thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate it. And if you're into this sort of content or you like what I'm doing with the channel, consider subscribing. If you like this video or it helps you out at all, please give it a like. It really helps me out. So thank you so much for checking out the videos, and let's jump right into the unboxing.
All right, so we've got the bolt-on panhard correction kit bracket here, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what comes in the packaging and where each bolt is going to go, and then we'll put it on the vehicle. So this is the big metal piece. Like, this is the most important part. This is the holes where you're going to put your track bar or panhard bar bolt through. This is where we're going to bolt to the stock location so that we can mount this whole bracket. It's going to be oriented like this on the driver's side of our vehicle. So we've got this plate right here. This little plate is going to go right up in here so that we can put a bolt through and bolt it in. We've got a 30 millimeter and a 40 millimeter nut here. So if we just take this bolt is going to go in through the bottom and bolt into this nut, just like this. Okay, you can see it on the bottom here, just like that. Then we're going to have this in here as well. This is going to go just like this. So we'll have this 40 millimeter bolt coming from this side with the washer. And then this is going to be the new bolt that we use up above. We'll use the stock bolt to go through this, I don't know, shaft or whatever you want to call it right here, sleeve. And then it'll go through this hole into the stock threads. And then, yeah, this will basically all sit right on that little bracket space. So let's take this over to the vehicle now, and let's get it installed. All right, so before we go too much farther, I just want to take a couple measurements. So we've got roughly to the edge of the tire. I'm going to pick somewhere that's fairly uniform on both tires. I always like to measure where the tread breaks, but this isn't really that much of an exact science, but where the tread breaks on my car is roughly at 16 inches. So I measure from the frame to where the tread breaks, and it's 16 inches. We'll go do the same on the other side. So it's 16 1/4 on this side. So it's not quite even already, but I tried to adjust my panhard bar accordingly to be even, but hopefully this will fix some of this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jack up the vehicle so that the axle is kind of floating, but it's sort of in normal ride height spot. And we'll pull out the track bar so that we can start bolting on the correction bracket. All right, so all we're doing now is I've jacked up both sides. Got my big trusty drill here. We're going to take off this wheel just to get it out of our way. And then we're going to use this jack to kind of manipulate it up and down as we need so that we can get this track bar out. I'll probably throw a jack stand under the hub just to keep it safe, but gotta pull off the wheel. All right, so we're gonna start by just breaking this bolt free with the 19, just like this, on the breaker bar. And then we're gonna grab this drill here. All right, so that shifted a little bit, but now this bar is essentially free. What we do need to do is pop this ABS line out and move it. So we gotta grab a flathead, just pop that through. That's like a rubber line or something. Must just have a thin wire in it. It's going to a harness, so we'll push that out of the way. That gives us enough space now. See if we can get the rest of that track bar out. I'm gonna go to the other side and quick pop out that bolt so the track bar is just completely off the vehicle. Remember, on these bolts, there's a shaft through here that's just like, you know, completely smooth for free pivoting. And so I've got a bunch of anti-seize all over my gloves trying to keep that off because it just gets on stuff and it eats away at paint and discolors things and whatnot. So, all right, we got the track bar or the panhard bar completely out. We'll remove that and we'll start putting in the bracket. Now, I think we're going to have to move this clip as well. I'm not sure, but I think we're going to have to do a little bit of angle grinding right here. And the last thing I want to do is cut this ABS line. So what we're doing here is we're just bending this open a bit because we got to put a couple brackets in here and got to make sure they fit okay. So this... I'm not sure why we shave that off. Yeah, okay, we're good. So you shave this off if you're going to be using the lower bolt hole. I'm not, so that's not going to get in the way at all. But yeah, this will kind of get in the way when you're putting the nut on the back side of this bracket. You don't need to worry about that. So, sweet. We'll ignore that. I was kind of not looking forward to using my angle grinder in here because I'm just not very good at it and wouldn't want to cut this line. So we'll let that lay there for now. Let's start putting in this bracket. So put this just like that. As you can see, this sleeve fits nice in here after we bent it open just a teeny bit. So here's where the bracket is. We're going to put a bolt this direction, the 40 mil. We're going to put the 30 mil, I believe, up through here. If you look underneath, let's get some extra light under here. See this big opening? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this, we're gonna feed it in, just set it in there just like that. And then we gotta just make sure we can fish around, find that. So put one bolt up, right through there, one bolt on the side, one through the stock hole, and one through the upper hole. So perfect. All right, let's get to it. All right, so all of this also we have to kind of put in loosely at first. So just remember that. All right, so it's not ideal, but I've got this 18 millimeter and a non-impact. Just trying to make sure I threaded this on correctly. Yeah, we did. Okay. There must be just a little bit of paint in those threads or something. So, okay. That's all the farther. I'm going to tighten that for now. We're going to now put on this outside bolt here. just like that. And I'm just starting these because we got to put this stock bolt through as well. We got to get it through that hole, and we got to get it through the sleeve, and then we got to get it to thread in the actual hole. So, all right, so start there. Now let's figure out what we can do here. So what we want to do is tighten this up most of the way. Take our 19 here. Good thing I got my little 3/8 inch. Take some of the play out of these. A lot of play. Not torquing them, but I just want them. So there, now there's just not as much play, which I like that. So now what we're gonna do here, grab this last bolt. So, because we've got more lift, we're gonna use this upper hole here, just like that. So, now, next part we gotta do is, if you've got a stock track bar, you'll probably just toss that back in and we'll keep on moving. Since I've got the Dobinsons adjustable heavy duty track bar, I've got to set the correct length for that. So we're gonna quick take a break here and adjust the track bar length. All right, well, I ended up just mounting up the bar in the stock setup, and then I just loosened and tightened whatever bolts to get it to fit, and then tightened down that stock bolt right on the front there. That allowed me to hold the track bar enough to be able to loosen these two massive nuts. So now we're gonna set it to stock length and just see how good of a fit that is. All right, so got the two track bars sitting by each other. If you do the math on the geometry of this stuff, it's pretty simple, and also you don't adjust much because the hypotenuse is so similar to the adjacent or the bottom of the triangle in the trigonometry. So a small couple turns on this is too much. I'm trying to figure out if this even goes all the way to stock length or not. It's almost like it's designed to be longer. Well, that's kind of interesting. Feels like it's bottoming out right there. So we'll just go with that, I guess, for now. Tighten those. All right. Go with the shortest length. Put this on the vehicle. See how it fits. All right, so one unfortunate part about this process is I don't even have an 18 impact. So hopefully that doesn't prevent me from torquing these to their correct spec. But we'll figure that out. So I think what we want to do now is let's put this nut and bolt through. Put some anti-seize on the smooth part of this shaft. Relax. I know what you're thinking. Since there's so much play in the bracket, it's kind of nice for fitting this in here, because I presume once we tighten stuff, it will pull everything where we need it, rather than needing to like pry on the track bar and stuff. That's what I had to do to get the other one to fit. You gotta move it like a 1/16 of an inch. So the nice thing too about this track bar is it's called off vehicle adjustable. So that means is it has to spin off of the vehicle in order to actually change the length. So it's a pretty safe track bar. So it's a pretty safe track bar, especially for, you know, when you're trying to fit all of this and make sure everything looks okay. So let's see what this is. This a 19 or an 18 on the end here? I think it's an 18. 18 combo here. Yeah, 18. All right. What I'm gonna do is start by tightening this one down. Tighten this sucker down. Got my setting on 2, so I don't torque it too bad. Go. See if this will turn anymore. Yeah, it's turning barely. That's about ready for torque spec though. 21. There we go. Not going to tighten that too much because there's bushings in there, you want to tighten them once the vehicle weight is on it. So I'm actually going to loosen this a little bit. There we go. All right, and then we've got this 18 on the bottom. Let's get that all tightened back up. There. Okay. That feels tight. That's tight. This. That's pretty tight. I'll torque that. Once we're done, I'm gonna throw the bolt back on this side, and then we'll set the vehicle down and take some measurements. I think we're basically done here. All right, so I'm gonna try and do this one-handed. If you look at the tread here, we're working with roughly 16 inches on this side. That's the top of the track bar right there. Wander over to this side. We're working with roughly 16.5 inches. It's roughly, sorry, it's not 16.5, 16.25. So the deal is in order to get this to be set up correctly, we need to make the track bar just a teeny bit longer, which will push it this direction. So that way this wheel can come 1/8 of an inch this direction. Since the track bar is in there, you need to make it a teeny bit longer. However, what I'm a little worried about is once we put a little more weight in here, it's gonna squat. Once it squats down 1 inch or so, what's going to happen is it's going to be lower on the arc, and I think it will slide the wheel this direction. So I'm trying to decide whether to really mess with it or wait for a time when I have more weight in the rear so that I can kind of dial it in with a lot of weight. Because daily driving, I don't really know if I'm going to notice that 1/4 of an inch difference. I think I'm going to leave it for now. Just show you a little rear view here. So, track bar is quite level already, which is great. I mean, compared to before, it's a lot more level. So, I'm going to torque all this stuff down, drive it a little bit, see how it rides. But yeah, for now, I like how this looks. I think I'm going to have to change the length just a little bit, but for most of you out there, you're not messing around with the length of the track bar at all, so don't worry about it. It's you're probably done by now. So in his video, these are the specs that he lists for each bolt.
All right, well, I'm not going to really dive into crazy amounts of suspension geometry because I don't really understand how 3-link, 4-link, 5-link, all these different suspension setups and geometries work. And there's probably someone out there that knows a lot more about it than I am, and you should watch those videos. But today I'm just going to explain a little bit what your panhard bar does. And so basically with your rear axle, you've got upper and lower control arms in the rear that help for the travel up and down. But really the biggest thing that keeps your axle housing from going left to right is your panhard bar. Now it's not super natural for it to move left and right because your wheels are only spinning forward, especially on the rear. But it's still an important thing, and it helps for when you're articulating and other things of this nature. And so I have an adjustable panhard bar, and I kind of thought that this was maybe all I really needed. But after I started looking into it a little bit, it kind of puts a band-aid on the solution. So it's definitely better than just running your stock panhard bar with a lift, don't get me wrong. But essentially what it does is your panhard bar bolts on one side of your frame and then bolts on your axle. And the center of the panhard bar in a stock setup is, I think, typically the center of your vehicle. And so what you typically have is you kind of have this like pendulum. And when it's level, if you're articulating in one way, it'll go up a little bit and it'll go down just a little bit. And what you really want to do is you want to keep this level panhard bar fairly close to the body of the vehicle, as far as I can understand. Especially if you start to lower that center, it's not as good. So what happens is you can, when you lift a vehicle, what happens is you start to drop this down a little bit. So you're now lifted, but since this bar is too short, when you drop it down, it starts to pull the axle this direction. So then what happens is the wheel on this side starts to stick out a little more, and the wheel on this side starts to suck in a little more. So then what you do is your panhard bar, which is originally level, is now like this, and you extend the length a little bit. And so now what it's done is it's pulled this wheel back out this direction and pulled this wheel in a little bit. So great, now we are centered. But the problem is first of all, the panhard bar is not level, and the center of it is maybe not even the center of the vehicle anymore, and the center is also a little bit lower than the vehicle. And what this has done is it's changed a little bit of the geometry of how your vehicle articulates. From my understanding, sometimes your vehicle will feel a little more top heavy, and I think also articulation off-road might feel a little sketchier because of this. So this is kind of, from the research that I've done, this is one side effect of just running an adjustable panhard bar. Now, it's not like this upgrade is a super expensive thing to do, but basically what your panhard bar angle correction kit does is it lifts this up so that essentially where that bracket, once you had lifted, had dropped down a little bit, because now you've got this little bit of extra lift. Your bracket was here, and then when you lifted it, it came down to here. So now you've got this angled bar. All we want to do is lift that bracket up proportionally with how much the suspension travel has pushed your axle down to get some lift. So then what that does is, since your bar was here, we mount it back up here, and therefore we don't need to extend the length because we're back to the same height as stock, and it also raises the center of that panhard bar back up to where it was. So we essentially return to the stock configuration of that panhard bar, and ultimately this should provide the best performance, especially for a lot of you out there that like to tell me how much the 4Runner is perfectly designed from OEM. This is a great reason as well. You know, this is basically returning it back to the OEM, and Zach, you're not as smart as the Toyota design engineers, so they knew what they were doing. So this is a great way where we can basically put that panhard bar into stock spec. The other thing that I thought was kind of interesting is so hypothetically we've got the panhard bar, right? So we're here at stock OEM, and then we lift the vehicle so it drops down a little bit, and then we extend it out a little bit so that we center the axle again, because when we had dropped it, pulls the axle this direction a little bit. If we do this and we push the axle to the left a little, what's kind of interesting is now we've actually shifted where that drive shaft was sitting under the vehicle. So what's kind of nice is instead of having to change that length at all, which if you're doing little teeny things to kind of fine tune where it sits, that's okay. But if you really start to change the adjustable panhard bar to be super long lengths, I think this can maybe change how your drive shaft is oriented from your transfer case to your rear axle. And I think that there could just be potential issues there as well. So, you know, if you're doing small changes, I don't know if it's really too big of a deal. But I don't have a ton of experience with that. I just know that your drive shaft angle, you know, you try to tune that in with your upper and lower control arms in the rear. I'm sure taking your flanges and moving them left and right in some sort of way is not going to be that great either. So you kind of saw there at the end, I actually wasn't able to shorten my adjustable panhard bar all the way to as short as I could with the OEM setup. But I'm expecting to add some more weight later this year, and so right now I'm really not that far off, and it works quite well with how it's set up. And the traction bar looks quite, and the panhard bar is quite level. Like, it's not like it looks bad the way it's set up right now. So my plan is to just leave it for now, and worst case scenario, I can take apart the panhard bar and I can cut some of those threads off with an angle grinder or chop saw or something. So that's something I'll look into if I'm having that bottoming out issue. But for now, it's already so close, and it's really like less than a 1/4 inch longer than the stock bar. I'm really not too concerned. So I'll be able to dial that in a more fine-tuning way later on if I need to. So maybe that clears some things up for you. Maybe my hand analogies weren't very helpful. But yeah, just wanted to kind of try and at least address a little bit of the geometry portion of this, because that's why this is important. So I know a lot of you out there are buying a 2.5 inch lift or 3 inch lift, especially if you're trying to fit 33 inch tires or some of these other things. The kit that I have is the extended height kit, so you're going to want this one if you're going to get one of the 2+ inch sort of lifts for your 4Runner. It's going to be the one you want. There's another version that's kind of like a shorty version, and that one is more for maximizing your OEM specs, or maybe if you're running a different sort of travel setup, but you're trying to not really add much lift to your vehicle. You just want travel because you're maybe doing like desert running or something of that sort, where you're still trying to keep your center of gravity down. There's that other option as well. So this kit does come in at $200 roughly at the time of buying this. And so it is a little more spendy than some of the other kits out there. But let me tell you, the moment you take this into a shop, they're going to charge you at least an hour of shop time, if not more, kind of doing this install. So one way or another, you're going to spend this or more, I think, on a welded on kit. So, you know, it just all depends on where you want to spend your money, and if you're feeling like you're capable of doing this at your house. If you're going to take this kit and have it installed somewhere, depending upon where you go, maybe it'll be, you know, roughly the same as doing a weld-on kit. But for me, I don't have a welder. I don't really know how to weld that well, but I definitely know how to bolt on things, and I'm, you know, plenty handy with using floor jacks and my, you know, Hercules electrical tools that I can use to pull out big bolts, put big bolts in, everything like that. Torquing down stuff, I can do all that myself. So it's really nice to have a bolt-on option, because that allows me to do this work in my garage, whereas I'm kind of, my hands are tied if we have to weld stuff. So yeah, I really like this kit. It's really DIY friendly, and I think it's a good bang for your buck as far as what this is going to bring to the performance of your suspension, especially if you're doing a lift like this where you're trying to improve the performance of your vehicle. Having this Panhard bar correction kit added is going to kind of maximize what you were trying to do with your rear suspension from the get-go. It's not really worth it to, you know, get some benefits with lifting the rear, but then sacrificing some of its performance because the geometry isn't correct. So definitely really recommend you check out some kit like this so that you can fix those geometry angles. So if you got any questions on this setup, feel free to comment down below. Otherwise, reach out to Dom on Instagram. He's super responsive and really helpful. And so go check him out too on Instagram. It's at dr_KDSS, but I'll have everything linked down below, as well as a link to this kit. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate the support as always, and I'll catch you all in the next video.